What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Grind Line Podcast. I am your host, Greg. You're listening to episode 275. I am here tonight with Ryan in the midst of crazy schoolwork that does not let him concentrate on anything but accounting. So your life's like real fun, right, Ryan?
No, it sucks.
It's just bad.
No, it's working full time. I was just talking to Chelsea about this, and she made a good point because I'm like, homework. I don't want to do anything until the kids are in bed. And she's like, they won't know anything. They're little enough that they won't care by the time they're older. They're like, Dad spent all day doing homework. They're not gonna remember that shit. So she provides a good point. So me being on here, I feel a little less bad about it.
They're not going to remember one random Wednesday in May when you had to do homework because you'll be rolling in piles of money from your job, right? That's why you're going to school.
That is the ultimate goal because I think I'm pretty much capped out on what I can do without a degree at this point. So it's either do it or stop making money. And I like making money. So I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah, I mentioned that a few episodes back. I said the American system is really dumb because you can do the job because you're already doing it. But in order to get paid more, you need a piece of paper.
It's crazy, right? I've got all the years of experience already doing what I'm doing and getting currently paid for. But like to maybe getting a degree, associates doesn't count, just a degree. And, 15 years of experience. Doesn't matter.
It's dumb. But we've got some stuff to talk about between when we recorded with Scotty and Brian from Locked On. A bunch of
Nailed
news
those, by
happened.
the way. Those were
Yeah,
some,
it was good.
I shouldn't say nailed them. We did well.
There was a mix of nailing and failing, is what there was.
I'm gonna say the phrasing at the start of that was
It was great.
interesting,
It was great phrasing.
but
But
we'll
we
go with
have
it.
some news. There was news in the middle of all of that after we recorded. Now, granted, no signings have happened yet. Lucas
Kind of.
Raymond did get his. Well, yeah, no Lucas Raymond or Moritz Seider signing. Lucas Raymond did get his insurance thing figured out, so he is going to the Worlds. Mo
Nice.
Seider did not get his insurance figured out, so he will not be going to the Worlds.
Not nice.
Dylan Larkin is not going to the Worlds because of what they're saying is an injury, but my assumption is he's just rehabbing the injury that kept him out during the season because
Could
you
be.
could see for the stretch of the last part of the season, Dylan Larkin did not look like he was at 100%. So I'm assuming that the team doctors are like, you can go, but we'd rather you stay home and rehab and take time off and train to come back next season at 100% because we all know that Dylan Larkin would literally, if he didn't have to sleep, would spend every waking moment playing hockey.
Yeah.
But this
Well,
is
we know that
probably
he
a
was
smart decision.
pretty excited about potentially going to play the Worlds because he was on the prelim roster, right?
Yeah, he was on the preliminary roster, and then I'm assuming the doctors pulled him aside and said, please don't.
Probably.
They need him.
Well, yeah, because you look back at his history at this point, he hasn't. So last year he did play 80 games, but before that, 71. And then we're getting the COVID year, but 44, 71, 76. He hasn't played a full season since 17-18, where he had 82 games, and that arguably his second worst season in how just things went because that team was just absolutely terrible. But we saw the impact of his absence this year. And when that much of a team, if that type of toll is taken on a roster like this, where it's just on the fringe of playoff worthy versus not, and you've got your 1C go down. We kind of mentioned this before. You're not a Colorado. You're not an Edmonton. You don't have a Draisaitl McDavid combo. You don't have. You can't have Larkin go out like you can a Landeskog, where you see McKinnon elevate himself even more, which don't even know if that's physically possible. But they also made the move to go, and they knew that they had that issue though, because at times you saw Colorado struggle with that depth piece, but that's why they went and got a Casey Middlestat to solidify it. Detroit doesn't quite have a Casey Middlestat right now to step in and fill a need, but on top of a healthy Larkin, could that be a Nate Danielson? Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that Larkin, for all intents and purposes, and people like to say that like he's injury prone or he's soft or whatever, and not really.
He's
I
not.
mean,
No.
the injuries that have kept him out for extended periods of time, the last one, I'm not sure what the play was, but the one before, Jamie Benn cross checked him in the neck. literally 99% of people in the league, if they get cross-checked in the neck, are going to go out for a somewhat like extended period of time. So I don't
Cross
really
check the neck,
blame.
punched in the back of the head,
Yeah,
just things.
Larkin was targeted this season and last season, and I don't blame him for being out because he was injured, and players should take time when they are injured to rehab themselves. But I think it's a smart decision to stay out during the Worlds. Now, aside from Larkin being out, though, Alex Lyon is played well. Trey Augustine did get invited to a backup role. Trey Augustine he got put in the third period of a preliminary game. He went 5 for 5 against Slovakia and then went five for
Shootout.
five in the shootout, and
Yep.
then saved all 4 shots faced in regulation. Just the kid looks so calm
Is that a
and
pleasant
moves.
surprise to you?
I call him the anti James Reimer, is what I called him. James Reimer is known for flailing all over the place. I watched the saves that Augustine made. It's just like it's a nice little sweeping side movement. Blocker down, pads down, swallows the puck up. No rebound, like rebound control, phenomenal. It's crazy.
Yeah, we touched on that of the Worlds, how basically calm he is when you're watching him in net. It kind of reminds you a little bit with current hockey that's going on in the NHL of a Swayman or even of a I'm not saying that he is one of these guys, mind you, but the tendencies of being sound and still as chaos is taking place in front of him reminds me of a Swayman and a Bobrovsky, where they're able to kind of pick and choose how they're peeking around, but their body is always square, moving with the puck, going side to side, and they're in that just right position to make a huge save when it matters most. And ironically enough, both those goalies that I mentioned are going against each other right now, which provides some great hockey. But no, he is ever since the Worlds where he maybe left his stamp, if you will, and the way that he helped elevate a Michigan State team back to relevancy this season has been impressive to watch. And I really hope we're not getting too excited, but the trajectory that he's shown so far, I don't know if we could ask for much more with what we're seeing on his side of things in the NCAA now going to the men's worlds. And then you've got Sebastian Cossa leading the Griffins right now in their playoffs. Like,
Who just advanced after beating Rockford.
how great is that? Like, that's a great feeling as a Wings fan, knowing that we finally have some potential competency in net coming.
Yeah, because that's been people's biggest gripe is that Eiserman's been here for one of their biggest gripes. People love to complain about things, but Eiserman's been here
Yeah.
for 5 years, and where's his starting goaltender? And I'm like, why would he just go out and trade for one or sign one to huge money when he's drafted 2 what look like stud prospects? Kosa could be ready in a season or two, Augustine shortly following. And now the downside to this is Trey Augustine is probably not going to play much in the Worlds because it was announced today that Alex Nedeljkovic is going to be also going over to the Worlds
Oh,
now.
another former Wing.
So him and Lyon will probably split time with Trey as a backup.
That's
But the
still good for
practice,
still
yeah,
great.
the practice, the reps, the getting on the ice with the guys like that, with seasoned NHL players is always a good experience. And hopefully, like you said, hopefully it translates to the other levels of play, to the AHL, to the NHL, because then maybe in 3 to 4 seasons, you've got your Allmark Swayman combo. And I hate doing comparables because when we
Yeah.
compare goalies and say they're going to be amazing and have awesome times, it's the
I'm not allowed to
opposite
talk about
happens.
happy times from goalies anymore.
The opposite happens, but it's looking good. That's the thing, is it looks good.
And that's all we can hope for. And I mean, everyone's screaming about Kosa. And I think that for majority out there, he shut people up this season. And he started strong and he kept it going. And he had one of the best stretches in Griffin's hockey history when we like to close out the year. That's what we have been hoping for, not getting, a Jared Coro or
Tom McCollum.
God,
We could just do this all day.
Calvin Pickard,
Calvin Pickard.
like career backup guy that's somehow surviving in Edmonton, even though he's getting absolutely destroyed at every game that he's out there because their defense is insanity. Even though they actually haven't played too bad defensively this playoffs.
Well, the Penguins just signed a former Red Wings goalie prospect, Philip Larson. So there's
Are they
that.
just picking up everyone from Detroit at this
Yep.
point?
Yep. Yep. If you thought Detroit was the island of misfit toys, the Pittsburgh Penguins are about to become Detroit
How old is he now?
2.0. Did very good in Sweden last season. He had a
Did he?
very good season. Yeah,
Is he
he
about
really picked it
25?
up. 25 or 26, I think.
Something like that. Good
Yeah.
for him.
Yeah.
That was a guy that we were really hopeful for.
Yeah, he was the last really highly touted goalie prospect, and then he had a really hard time to where it forced him over to Sweden. So, we have a couple more things before we get to kind of the fun hypotheticals portion of the show. Axel Sandin Pellikka signs his 3-year entry-level contract after winning the SHL championship with Skellefteå AIK over in the Swedish Hockey League.
How many times did you practice that?
I've listened to Lars a lot. And
Yeah.
if you need, okay, here's a little prep, here's a thing for Lars. If you need to learn how to pronounce the names of the teams over in Sweden, Lars actually has an episode of the Swedish Winger. I made the logo and stuff for him. It's really cool. But he's at an episode of the Swedish Winger podcast, which is on the major podcast platforms, where he goes through each Swedish league team and tells you how to pronounce the name. And that way you can look at least semi-competent trying to say a Swedish name as an American. So you kind of sound dumb, but at least you're trying a little bit more. So Lars has that out there for everyone where you can go and listen to that and he will pronounce everything for you. And you can kind of use it like Duolingo where he'll say it and then you can say it and he'll
You know,
say it.
people
and
are
you can say
probably
it.
very happy that you're utilizing this at this point.
It's amazing. So last season, he in 39 games played had 10 goals and 8 assists for 18 points. At the U20s, he had 7 games played with 2 goals and 4 assists for 6 points. And in all international tournaments last season, had 14 games played, 5 goals and 5 assists for 10 points. In 14 playoff games before they won the championship, he had 2 goals and 5 assists for 7 points. And this is the dude that it was also confirmed that he will be going back to Sweden next season.
Mr. Golden Helmet. Well, likely.
No, it was confirmed. Ice
I
Hockey
know.
Gifts confirmed it.
They did, but he said the quote was my plan. Now, there's a sliver of hope that
So
he
my
pulls a
sliver of
Lucas
hope,
Raymond.
my sliver of hope is that that's the only way he plays in North America is if he pulls a Lucas Raymond.
And I wouldn't put it past him.
But here's the thing, even though the SHL season starts before preseason and before camp, if he's on a Red Wings, if he is on a Red Wings deal, like he's signed for the Red Wings, he could still play in those before they loan, because they technically now have to loan him to the SHL is what they have to do.
Since he's
So
on an ELC.
yeah, so I'm not sure that he's required to be there day one for his SHL team, though they would probably want him there. If I'm the Red Wings, I say, hey, I know you want him and he's amazing and he's probably going to be your top defenseman, but we need him for preseason and we need him for training camp. And then we'll see if he makes the Red Wings or not. And if he makes the Red Wings on the team, if not, he goes back to Sweden.
I think we'll be able to pull a lot by the summer, meaning if we see someone bought out, specifically on the right side, because we already know from Yzerman's comments that you've got an Albert Johansson and a Jonathan Berggren.
They have no waiver exemption.
Yeah. And you know that they're going to be lost to waivers. There's no doubt in my mind, the moment one or both hits it, they're gone. So there's a lot of things that are going to have to play out, especially on the back end, for it to make sense. And I really think that there's going to be a buyout or two.
Yeah, I was
trade.
messing around. I was messing around with Cap Friendly's
Yeah, you got
armchair
wild.
GM.
You got real wild.
I got real wild, and maybe we'll talk about that next week. I'll have you make one and Tyler make one, and we can compare.
Oh, see,
But-
everyone gets upset when I do it because I'm afraid.
That's going to be the point of the episode. Just get upset at us for our roster that we make.
No,
up.
don't encourage it. Let's
No,
calm
I
down a
encourage
little bit.
I encourage.
They do
all
that enough on their
interaction.
own.
So I think that I still think Berggren is gone. He has really shown out in the play. He's the reason that one of the reasons that the Griffins are going on to the next round. I believe
Didn't
he had
have
the game
winning
in
goal
all
in all
three.
three of their wins?
Yeah, he did. So I think, man, maybe he's just upping his trade value at this point. And
See,
maybe you package him to get a top 4 defenseman, or maybe you package him with a pick and another prospect to get a top 6 winger, because you need to make something happen there. And I
yeah.
know, especially after these playoffs, there's going to be a lot of teams calling about Berggren. And if he had already rejected an extension, I think that's a possibility you really have to take into account.
I, I'm not looking too deep into that, and mainly because it was probably a hey, we're giving you a prospect type deal, so probably minimal pay or raise for that matter. It could have been a small bridge, but I would venture to say that he wants more of a guarantee that he's got somewhere to stay, and I can't blame him for that because he's to the point now where and I have made this comparison several times. Like you look at Gus Nyquist back in the day, it's an easy Swede comparison, but he overstayed his welcome in Grand Rapids until they finally brought him in, and we saw him be an impact player immediately in Detroit. That could very well be what we're going to see from Berggren, but for who? Does he come in and replace a Perron? Like, is that a contract that he fills in for, or is he going to be a replacement for Robbie Fabry? I say that loosely because Fabry's still under contract for one more season. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I like the thought of him being packaged for someone specifically on defense. Maybe you can get rid of a Berggren and a Justin Holl for a strong right shot defenseman. I think that's your best case scenario because the guy that just helped create the goal for Florida Panthers is going to be a free agent, but he's also going to be expensive, and that's Brandon Montour. And he's also, I think, north of 30 at this point.
Well, I think the other thing that, and I think this is, will wrap up our conversation on Berggren, is that the other half of the coin you have to look at is the other statement Eiserman made about getting better defensively,
Yes. And Johansson
especially
can
in the
bring that.
forward. Well, especially in the forward group. And that is where Berggren has lacked, is his defensive effort as
There.
a forward. If he can score a goal, but then he is the result of two, then that's not even. Or if he can score, but then he's directly responsible for another one, that's a wash.
Yeah.
So I think there's a point to be made there that maybe Berggren gets traded simply because his two-way game is not up to par.
Yeah. I can go either way with that one, mainly because there are guys on this team that didn't see a lot from defensively, but they also had a role to fill, namely a Kane and a DeBrincat. Kane, I think,
Especially on special teams.
yeah, Kane fit that role the way he was supposed to. Cat was the more frustrating one, I think, especially as the year came to an end, but he still had, I think, a solid year. But to the defensive point, like it's going to be interesting, like because they're for that right before Berggren got basically scratched into the ether, he had some bad gaffes that led to goals and like impressive scoring chances against. And I think that, to your point, was the nail in the coffin, final nail.
So bringing this all back to Axel Sandin Pellikka, he's going to look great next season next to Simon Edvinsson on his 3-year entry level contract.
Wouldn't that be a wild
That would
pairing
be
to throw
wild.
out there?
Yeah,
I,
it'd be
I
wild.
don't think it'd happen, but that's a lot of
Yeah,
speed for
it
a
is.
big guy and a little guy.
I think that the more likely pairing would be Albert Johansson and Axel Sandin Pellikka, because Pellikka has that high offensive motor where Johansson's going to be kind of a shutdown guy.
Is that something you'd want to do? Is have two rookies as your third pair?
Johansson, I'm not sure how. I mean, he'll be an NHL rookie, but he's got pro under his belt.
I mean, arguably, they both have pro under their belt.
Would you rather have Ben Sherratt and Axel Sandin Pellikka
I could honestly see that as the most likely on the third pair.
than Edvinsson and Seider up top and Wallman and
Johansson,
Johansson as the bottom?
potentially.
Ugh.
Maybe they don't. Maybe they think that Johansson's been around long enough that he could be with Pelika and they roll with it. But I just don't see two guys in their first year. And again, this is all just hypothetical. If ASP makes it, I don't see two brand new NHLers being paired up. Not in this situation where the likely expectation of this team, and it's going to be there, is they have to make the playoffs.
All right, moving on to our other stud prospect, Nate Danielson, who a
Woo!
lot of people had written off and said, "Oh, he's going to be another third line center, or maybe he'll be a second line center." He's looking more and more like a Dylan Larkin clone every day. He
Uh-huh.
is absolutely destroying the playoffs right now. This season, between the Brandon Wheat Kings and the Portland Winterhawks, he has 54 games played with 24 goals, uh, 43 assists. For 66 points, 67 points. I'm trying, they don't put like combined totals down there. So I'm like mathing quickly in my head.
Just copy paste it to Excel.
I have it as a screenshot right
Oh,
now.
jeez.
So that is what it is. He has 67 points this season. In the playoffs, though, in 14 games played, he has 5 goals and 16 assists for 21 points. That got him named the WHL Player of the Week. He is one of the reasons, again, the Portland Winterhawks are going to the finals. They're going to face off against the Moose Jaw Warriors. That game starts on Friday, May 10th at 7 p.m. And the kid is just, again, just looking like a smart Iserman pick, because people are like, oh, Nate Danielson, that might be kind of a reach. And we had even said, well, you got Danielson and Sandin Pellikka in the first round. And maybe if you swapped positions where you drafted them at, it might make sense. But now it looks like both of them
Oh,
might
it
just
sounds
be
like
big
the
hits.
Lions a couple last season.
Like, right? Like you just hit after hit after hit. Are Steve Yzerman and Brad Holmes the same person?
They could be. Have you seen them together?
I have never seen them together. We have to Scooby
Yeah.
Doo this where you like pull off one of their heads and it's the other one.
And people probably look at Danielson's points and they're calling for he's not that great, but Brandon was not very good.
Well, here's the other half of it, I think, too, where Yzerman again preaching defensive play. And Nate Danielson was already a good defensive player before this season. In 2022-23, and again,
It
plus
just wasn't
minus,
consistent was the issue.
sure, plus minus is not, again, I don't like using it as an individual stat. But when you look at his 2022-23 season, where he ended the season with 78 points in 68 games and was a minus 12, and this season he has 67 points and he's a plus 26, that shows you, I mean, that means that he is part of the defensive effort now, 100% becoming a two-way player. And like I said, he looks like Dylan Larkin out there.
Yeah.
He is a fantastic setup guy. He can score goals. We've seen it. And it's very exciting to see. We've said for a while, like, you're not going to get probably a superstar center. You're not going to fall that back down into the lottery. You are not going to go out and sign a guy for $14 million or whatever. But if you can have a guy that is as good as Dylan Larkin as your 1B, that's all you need. Round out your top six with another high scoring winger and get a guy who is equal to Dylan Larkin, which is what you needed during that stretch where you lost 7 in a row. You needed a guy to at least try to be as good as Dylan Larkin, and that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a recipe for a winner, or at least most of a recipe for a winner. Goaltending is another issue. But I think if you get a guy who is as good as Larkin, which Danielson looks like he could be, that takes you just that next step further.
And it's something that they need. There's no hiding it. They need it because God bless you, Andrew Kopp and JT Compher, but you in a more sheltered role helped this team a lot. Meaning, look at the line that we saw from Compher before Raz got hurt and Fischer, or I'm sorry, Kopp, Fischer, and Rasmussen. Amazing. And that not in the sense that they were just lighting up the score sheet, because actually they kind of were for a bit. They won on a freaking banger, but it let him see less elevated competition, which I think Cop is good enough for most teams to be a 2C, but for what Detroit was needing this season, it wasn't there. And what I like to look at it, when you see Compher and Cop playing at a high level, you know you're going to win that game. The
Yeah.
problem is we don't see that high level enough. And I understand it's near impossible to do that game in and game out. I get it. But to see what we saw from them, to me, because of what they're making in terms of a contract, that expectation for me is a little bit higher, that the effort needs to be there much more often than it was. And because we know that they both got it, we've seen it. There's a reason they were top 10 in scoring on the team. Now we just need to keep that consistency. But if they can be sheltered more, or you put them on a line with Nate Danielson, if Danielson somehow bursts onto the scene and forces his way in, huge. Because now you put that type of what I noticed, and let me reset that a little bit. When Cop and Compher are with guys that play fast, their play is elevated. Like I liked the hockey mind or an IQ, if you will, when Cop, Perron, and Kane were together, but it was so slow. Kane already plays slow. He lets everyone kind of come to him and he forces his way around them. Perron, some nights he's kind of like a Petry. He's on cocaine. Some nights he's on, and then he's not. Cop or Compher, for instance, like when you've got someone moving and you say like a Danielson, you're going to see him elevated because he gets to float around a little bit more and get in those spots to make his playmaking come to life. And I think that's going to be important.
Yeah, so next season, your second line is Alex DeBrincat, Nate Danielson, and Patrick Kane. You're welcome. There's gonna be
Mhm.
like
Jeez.
how awesome would that be? Just like again, it's great to think about.
You know what's
Um,
great though is Danielson's a big boy.
oh yeah, and he can
I'll
apparently
be
grow a beard.
intrigued how things look come camp this year, because right now he's listed at what, 6'2", 190, 185.
Elite Prospects has Nate Danielson listed at 6'2", 187.
So if he's put on a little bit of poundage, mainly from muscle over the summer, the dude is going to be ready for the NHL. It's simple as that, because that is a body you want to see driving through the middle of the ice. And that's going to be important because now you're looking at, again, like you said, your next Dylan Larkin version of a player, because he's going to be able to go in there. And we've already seen him not afraid to put a body on and go into the boards for a puck battle. They need that. But also his speed and IQ are awesome. Something else they're going to need over the next several years. And what's even crazier to me right now, we're not even talking about some of the guys that are in Grand Rapids that we've been preaching about for the last couple of years, like a Kasper.
Yeah, like a Carter Mazer. Like there's guys that are going to be coming up that again pretty quickly that are going to need spots. So what we're going to move into tonight is basically the pontificating portion of our episode where we take a look at thanks to evolving hockey,
Love them.
their contract projection tool has been updated and oh boy. I think the two we're going to take a look at are the two big ones tonight. Do you want to start with Seider or do you want to start with Raymond?
Either way,
All
it's
right,
the
so
elephant
we're
in the room
going
at
to
this
start.
point.
Let's start with Mo. So we're gonna start with Moritz Seider. I put his numbers in, and then I said, "Yeah, that's about right." So Mo Seider is projected to get. Now, this was the what part I don't agree with. A 6-year deal at 27% at 7.661 million. Now, the only reason that would make sense to me would be Yzerman trying to save a couple $1,000,000 to spend on another free agent. And then after that 6-year deal is up, you sign him for 8 or whatever. Like, I think if Mo continues at the arc that Mo continues at being the hardest played defenseman, especially if you can open him up, get him better partners, get better defensemen overall, and open him up to some ozone time, easier comp, he's just going to go up.
Yeah.
But at 7.661, that puts him well below what I think he should get. And it says if you signed him to an 8-year deal, which they only have him at a 10% chance of signing an 8-year deal, it's 8.466, which is more in line with, I said 8.5, 8 years,
Yeah.
8.5. That's more in line with what I was thinking. But I mean, would you rather have him sign a 6, knowing that later you're going to have to pay him more? Or would you rather just forego that, get that extra 2 years of savings and pay him the 8 now?
I mean, he just turned 23. So you're taking him to 29, and then you can do what you got to at that point. But I think right now, if you can sign him for a little bit cheaper for an extended period of time, go for it.
So that cap hit at 7.661, I said, yeah, 7.661 would put him between, let's see, would put him between Jared Spurgeon and Dmitry Orlov. People making higher than him would be Quinn Hughes, Shea Weber, Victor Hedman, Jacob Truba, Thomas Chabot, John Carlson, Brent Burns, Miro Heiskanen, Mikhail Sergachev, Alex Petrangelo, so on and so forth, would be making more than him. But some of those contracts were signed a while ago, especially
Yeah.
Shea Weber. When Shea Weber signed, wasn't it like an 11-year deal or
I
something?
forgot he even existed.
Yeah, he's on Arizona's payroll and he's still being paid, but Shea Weber's not playing hockey anymore. Arizona, sorry, Utah. He's on Utah's payroll,
The
but
Utes.
he's not playing hockey anymore.
Mm, darn.
So I think that's the only people the people that we notable names making less than him would be Morgan Riley, Aaron Ekblad.
What's
That's
Ekblad
about
making?
it. Ekblad is making 7.5.
Really?
Yeah, it was signed a while ago. Right now, Ekblad would make more if it was signed
Oh,
more
he's only
recently.
got one more year remaining on his current deal. So it'd be probably a similar contract to that, then essentially, is what we're talking about. Because Ekblad, he turns 28 in February. He's signed for one more year at 7.5. So he'll be 20 coming into his 29 years. So really, that contract would be similar to Ekblad's situation.
If you went the 8 years and paid him the 8.5, he would be $50,000 more than Miro Heiskanen, at the same level as Mikhail Sergachev, and just below Alex Petrangelo.
So
So
what's the percentage of cap hit at those two?
8.5. Well, if the cap hit is going to be 8.77, 8.5 is going to be just under 10%.
So when Ekblad signed his extension, it was 10.2% of the cap, 10.3.
Yeah, Seider would be just under 10% by signing an 8.5.
And Ekblad was indeed an 8-year deal. So I mean, if that's the case, I don't mind having that signed and it taking him to 29-30 season because we know that the
Sure.
cap's going to go up. We know the situation will likely be different by that point, but you're still signing him for 6 years. I don't see a problem with that. Eight's great and all, but if you got six, you've got it locked in. And if it saves you a couple bucks, that's important, right? At least in the near term.
I think I'm more in the camp of 8 years for Mo simply because, like we had stated before, the role you've put him in and the pressure you've put him under, making him the hardest played defenseman in the league. I think
Mhm.
at this point, giving him 8 would be kind of like a we owe you this because we have done this to you. We have played you this hard. We have not allowed you to be very offensive. We've played you these insane minutes against the top level competition, basically own like a majority of the top level competition in the league for most of the time. Like your reward is this 8-year contract. We clearly want you to be here for a long time. Here's your contract. 6 though, I mean, could I see it? I mean, I could see I would think 6 to me is a weird length. Like I would say 5 or 8 would be where you would go there. But I mean, to me, I'm signing him to 8 years simply because, again, he has proven he's your number one defenseman. You've got another potential number one defenseman in Simon Edvinsson coming right up next to him. So I'd lock him up now as
I
long
mean,
as you can.
yeah, he's your number one average time on ice guy. It's simple as that. And those are typically who you lock up for long term because you know that you're going to be relying on them and leaning into them throughout their career. So
Andy has not missed a game in his 3 years.
thanks for jinxing that one.
German steel bends, it does not break. We are going to take a look at Lucas Raymond now. We'll end the show with Lucas Raymond. Lucas Raymond is predicted to sign a 7-year deal. That's a 29% chance of a 7-year deal at 7.739 million. If it was 8 years, it's a 22% chance of an 8-year deal at 8.835. I had Lucas Raymond at an 8 by 7.75. A 7 by 7.73 would be kind of close. So I'll pat myself on the back for that one.
Feeling really good
Now,
about that.
the thing about these projections is they are like eerily like accurate.
They're
They've
usually pretty darn close.
like pretty even with Steve Yzerman, who's generally a wizard with most contracts, that they've been very close on the money. If you get Lucas Raymond, I guess first Ryan, would you rather do 7? I guess at the 7 or 8 years doesn't matter on Raymond. That seems like a decent jump from 7.739 to 8.835 for an extra year.
Yeah. I mean, again, whatever's going to save them money, I'm for. But he is what, a year? Where did Detroit go? He's a year younger than Mo.
Yep.
Let's see, his birthday was in March. He just turned 22. I kind of want to. That's one I would prefer to see a 7. I like the 7. Again, it takes him to 29, but I would like the 8 there. I think you can't. It's harder to put. I don't know. I like the premium on the forward at this point, especially for Raymond and what he started to show us this season, especially with Larkin out. And they're going to need it because if you don't bring back a Kane, that puts even more. Maybe not even, but Raymond's now going to be elevated that much more because they're going to have to find someone to make that replacement. Who that's going to be, obviously, we'll see. But to me, I think it's more appropriate. I like both guys at 8 years, but I think if there's one that's not going to get it and one that is going to get it, I prefer that one that does get it probably to be Raymond.
So Raymond at that 7.73 number would make him the 11th highest paid right wing, right between Matt Boldy, who is on a $7 million contract, and Jesper Bratt, who is on a $7.875 million contract, which is, I mean, that's good comps, right? Like
Yeah,
Boldy, I think, is a good comp.
no, I think it's fair, and they're good young players that you just mentioned, and helping lead their team for that matter. That's what you're seeing with Raymond.
On the 8.835 number, that would make him the 7th highest paid right winger, right between Jakub Voracek and Mikko Rantanen. Mikko Rantanen's at a 9.25. Voracek is at an 8.25.
And Voracek just announced his retirement, didn't he?
Yeah, so I mean, he would drop off the list. Jordan Kyrou is the next at an 8.125.
I'd prefer the 7 because I think at this stage of it, it's more appropriate. Because as you'll see, many people say you don't pay for potential. So to me, the lower price from what we've seen would be best. And I also kind of look at maybe when Stamkos was signed um, to his now about to be expiring deal in Tampa. Yzerman got that pretty damn low in terms of what they could have had versus what it ended up being. And if that's what he can weasel his way through with Raymond and Seider, that's going to be huge. And I don't think people will really appreciate that as much until they start seeing wins. But I think that's what's going to have to happen. And so my preference, obviously, and I think everyone else's would be that it's that lower number, but still having the term.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take the 7-year money with the 8-year term on this one. I'm going to do a
Please,
little
that'd be great, wouldn't
Yzerman
it?
mix and match. An Yzerman mix and match. But I think that I think when you look at Raymond and you look at Seider, those are both fair value. It's fair market value for what they've done, for what they mean to the team, for where they are going to play, where you hope that I mean, for high level guys, you hope they finish their careers with the
Yeah.
team because Raymond has shown he's your top line right wing. Seider has shown he's your number one defenseman. He's your franchise D. I
Yeah.
think that those are the guys that you do lock up. I'm not sure Yzerman. There have been people that have mentioned that Yzerman set the bar with Larkin and no one's going to make higher than Larkin, but I don't put a lot of stock into that considering
No.
that players sign at different times based on what the current cap is. And I would look at it more of percentage of the cap when the player signed, like you said, not the value the player signed for. Because when Larkin signed, it's going to be a whole different world than, say, when Nate Danielson has to sign an extension or when Simon Edvinsson has to sign an extension.
Yeah.
You're not working off the same numbers.
No, and I think that's going to be important because that's why I mentioned Stamkos though in particular, because when Stamkos signed, it was for 11.5% for an 8-year deal. But you look at the cap hit and it's 8.5 million. But at the time that he signed, elite, one of the top centers in hockey. There's a reason we were drooling over him, hoping that he would come in and replace Pavel Datsyuk, even though that was pretty much never happening. But we all got our hopes up because the Hockey News, our bastards and other diggers were like, "Oh, Stamkos coming to meet Detroit." Never did. Cool. That's what you're hoping for. Do I want to see the cap hit of 11.6% for one of these guys? Not necessarily. But now you look at what Stamkos is making versus where everything else is at, and it's a freaking steal because he's
Yeah.
still a 40-goal scorer.
That's going to be what I mean. That is going to be kind of what you look at not Lucas Raymond, but you look at Dylan Larkin like that. And you
Yeah.
could look at Larkin in 3 seasons and be like, man, that's an amazing, like, that's a fantastic contract. And if you can get Raymond at a value under 10% of your cap, and you can get Seider at a value under 10% of your cap, total cap, that's, I mean, both of those in 5 seasons, maybe even like 3 seasons, those are going to look like fantastic deals. Like I said, when they lighten Seider's load a bit and free him up to be more offensive and give him easier matchups. And Raymond, I mean, he's so young and then just put up a 71-point season. If that continues and then even develops, like people, he's not even in his prime yet. Your prime is, and as we're seeing even with Larkin, like primes are maybe stretching out even a little bit later. Like they were saying, oh,
Yeah.
23, they used to say like 23, 24, 25, like that's your prime. But maybe we've seen players play super consistently, high level players play super consistently into their late 20s, their early 30s,
Yeah.
because sports medicine's gotten better, training and development's gotten better, nutrition's gotten better, that they're able to have their bodies keep up better than they used to,
Mhm.
that they can maintain a higher level of play than people even 5-10 years ago could.
Yeah, no, it's if you're coming in under a 10.5% hit, because that's what Larkin signed in at with Larkin or Raymond Seider. Let's go. Because why is that nice? You look at a certain team north of the border, and you've got one of their players at 14.64% of the cap. Can you guess which one that is?
Is that Mitch Marner?
That was Matthews. Mitch
Oh, okay,
Marner was at
Austin Matthews' new contract.
yeah. Matthews' new contract, 14%. Marner's contract, 13.3%. Nylander is at only 8.7. That's the current contract. New contract, 13.7% of the cap.
Oh, screwed. That's amazing.
Tavares,
Oh yeah, happy Toronto's out of the playoffs
when
to all who
Tavares was
celebrate.
signed, 13.8% of the cap. So avoiding those types of situations, kind of vital. And
Don't be
also
dumb.
love, love them losing out in the playoffs in the best possible way of game 7 in overtime.
Good shit, Ryan. Final thoughts.
Fuck the Leafs. Already running 33.
Yeah, I guess I'll echo that sentiment. You can follow me online at Bringing the Wing. You can follow the Grindline Podcast online at Grindline Pod. We'd like to give a shout out to Vintage Detroit, which is the only place you should get your Detroit jerseys from and worked on. You can go check out our exclusive t-shirt collection with Vintage Detroit by going to their website, clicking on the Keep It Local tab, and then clicking on the Grindline Podcast link. Cool stuff up there. I'm currently working on some more stuff to get over to them as well. You can also follow us on YouTube. Head over to YouTube, search the Grindline Podcast, like, subscribe, like the video. If you're watching this, hit the like button on the video. That helps get us up in the rankings and exposes us to more people who can listen to our stupid voices talk about Detroit Red Wings hockey. But that is going to do it for us tonight. So for Ryan, I am Greg. You stay classy, Hockey Town.